Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Captain Leo Walton. He's going to tell us about his near death experience and about life after a near death experience. Hi, thanks for
Hi,
coming. You're on your
hi,
boat
hi-
today, your ship. What's the
yeah,
right word?
I'm on the Sea Spirit. I'm aboard, yes, sitting at my piano. I'm one of the few people that have a piano on board his boat. So the music
Awesome.
sounds really good. I wish I could play it, but I can't.
You're living the dream. Now, you've lived on this boat for how long?
I've lived on boats for the past 30 years, 3 decades,
Wow.
and I've traveled about 25,000 miles,
Wow.
sailed everywhere, lots of islands, and up and down the east coast of America through the Florida Keys to the Dry Tortugas, Bahamas, Bermuda, all around, Caribbean. It's been good. And I'm
Amazing.
changing gears now. I really thank you for inviting me on here. I've had a lengthy time with Ions. I haven't been active with them since 2015, but what a warm and great relationship that I began back then. Life has a way of getting in the way of pursuing certain things. And if you really attach to it and enjoy doing it and want to help people heal and recover from these near death experiences, well, I'm wanting to be really proactive in that from here on out. So thank you
I've,
very much.
I've never heard it said that way to heal from a near
Heal.
death experience.
Yes. Well, my near death experience started with an electrocution. I was electrocuted with 220 volts, 50 amps while working on my boat. It happened in 2007 on 8/8 Lions Gate portal. Ironically enough, some people say that's a synchronicity for it to happen at that time frame. It's a real powerful energy event. Definitely was grand illuminating for me, but it ended up I didn't touch anything with electricity, but it'd been some time. I had a failure on a circuit breaker that I was trying to repair on a very hot day. It was about 100 degrees, and inside of a boat sitting on the water, it gets really hot with no shade inside without air conditioning. So I had to leave it on just to be able to fathom doing that repair. Anyway, what happened? I had a magnetic bracelet. I used to drive many, many miles a year in my automobile, and I developed kind of a carpal tunnel syndrome in my wrist just driving with the steering wheel. And I discovered this magnetic bracelet, and I'd worn it for years because I found it to really lessen the pain. It must reduce the inflammation or something. I don't know. But anyway, when I wore it, I had no pain. When I didn't wear it, I had pain. So you figure that part out. But I had left that on, which was a huge mistake. Not being around electricity for probably a decade and a half at the time. I just got lackadaisical and forgot the safety. You know, safety first. Look around what you're doing. But what happened is the electricity, I didn't touch anything, but it arced. Electricity is a magnetic field, and it arced to one of the magnets. It actually melted the bracelet off of my wrist, but the electricity came in the side of my hand, traveled up my left arm into my shoulder and up through my brain, and also down through my whole left side into the floor. But it knocked me 13 feet through the air and knocked me unconscious. I can't begin to tell you how long I was unconscious. I was by myself. It was about noon time when I was doing this repair. And when I came to, that I was came to for a little bit, it was pitch black dark. So I'd been unconscious for a number of hours. But when I came to with like the deepest, longest breath I've ever taken in my life. And it was like I was doing a yoga pose. I was on my back, but I was arched back. It was one of the most dramatic experiences I had at the time. And I ended up going back unconscious. And I finally got up and drugged myself to bed, where I managed to lay there in a coma for 3 weeks before anybody came to rescue me.
Wow.
which I got lucky in that regard. I remember coming to a couple times along the way in that 3 week period, but it was really memory. It was funny the first time I remember when I came to, my left arm was literally doing this. It was physically leaping up and down in the air off of the bed like a fish jumping out of water. I imagine it was probably the nerves twitching from the where the energy went through me because it melted all the myelin coating off of the whole thing in my arm up through my brain and all. I had traumatic brain injury from it. I had nerve damage on my whole left side. Ended up taking me a year to learn to read, learn to talk again, walk again, all that stuff that went with it. All of my doctors that I've had over the years, about 30 of them, all they could shake their head and say, "You're just a miracle, man. You're not supposed to be here to take that kind of a hit, plus all the brain damage that went with it." So I really, really am lucky to be here. I got really depressed after about 18 months of struggling and losing everything. I lost my business, lost my marriage, and lost myself. Now I ended up in a battle between, as an athlete, and I was used to getting injured and doing whatever was necessary to come back and always come back stronger. And the more harder I tried, the more I failed. And I got very depressed, suicidal. I had a really nice plan for a suicide, which we don't have to talk about today. But having been a professional firefighter for 5 years, I'd seen so many different suicides. And so I really rationalized how I wanted to go. And I couldn't do it. I chickened out at the end because my mother was alive. And I said, man, I might as well go up there and murder her first before I was to kill myself because it would kill her anyway. So I bailed on it. And I'm really glad today, 15 years later, I have a wonderful life. I'm happy. If I could snap my fingers like that and go back to that day, keep my marriage, keep my business, keep wherever I was at in the world, I was a happy guy. Thought I was a happy guy. Was doing what I wanted, had some toys, living the life, living the dream. But I would not go back, not at all. I tell you, hell no. I'm staying right here.
How did you get rescued? Did you manage to get to the radio on your boat?
I had a cell phone that I communicated with my children, but they get busy at times too, and sometimes it's longer getting back and talking with them. And I guess one day my oldest son just happened to call me. The phone had been laying there, it plugged in, thank goodness. So I guess it still had some battery in it. But I managed to wake up and answer the phone. Hello, how are
Wow.
you? And I was having really bad chest pains at the time. So him and my his mother, who I put through nursing school, she actually the hospital she works at, they went there and got a heart monitor machine, and he and her hooked up and came down here to my boat while I was in bed and checked me all out like they were the emergency squad, and my heart turned out okay, and we ended up going to the emergency room for the first time after that visit.
Oh, so you were
And
docked when this happened.
oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I was out of it. I was
I mean, you
done.
weren't out in the water. You were okay. I was picturing
I
you out in
got
the
to
water and this happened and
no, I was on my boat at the marina, so
okay.
they had access to be able to get on board.
Okay.
But it was just a lot of damage. And when I talk about people and they tell about all these wonderful experiences they had at their time of their near deaths that they remember. Well, what happened with me is I had horrible memory issues. It just literally electricity blew all of my short-term memory out. It was like I had really long-term memories were just all over the place. But short-term memory, my ex-wife said to me before she went out the door, she says, "I'm tired of repeating myself. I'm not going to live the rest of my life with a retard. See
Oh,
ya. And she was gone. And at the time, I was numb. I was just totally numb. I ended up losing the feeling in my body. I couldn't feel the sun or the wind or anything for about 4 months. The electricity just shorted out that whole area. And when it came back just as sudden as it left. So I've been a real sensitive person since that time frame. I actually turned into what they call a G-mander or electromagneto, which means I can literally close my eyes and turn around and feel the four directions and tell you north, south, east, and west. So that I'm that sensitive to energy fields, which
so
has
what was
been
your
some issues. Yes.
what was your
Uh,
experience like during that
Well,
time?
Well, my what I think happened is, the human brain, if you have some kind of a traumatic brain injury, that I've read a lot of information, done lots of research for my own benefit, trying to get better, learning about traumatic brain injuries. They claim that it usually takes about an average of 3 years for the brain to recover to its maximum intellect at the end of 3 years. In other words, at the end of 3 years, that's what you're going to get. It's not going to get any worse. It's not going to get any better. It's just going to stay at that level. And so what happened with me is I got into the astral travel over time. Once I got back and got my feelings and got my feet back on the ground, I started pursuing all of these adventures and did all of these deep meditations, Buddhism, and with the astral travel, all of that stuff, and astral projection, whatever you want to call it. But with me, I started having all of these visions and all of these relationships with people. And what I wonder is if maybe those were those memories that I had at the near death experience time, and it just took them that long for those brain pathways to get to that memory to be able to even see it. So maybe the memories I was seeing or those images were old memories that I couldn't remember from when they occurred. I don't know.
Okay.
It's a whole new dimension that we're dealing in this realm with
So
the
you
NDE.
don't remember after electrocution leaving your body having experience, but later on it's like was coming
Later
back in
on,
memories.
that's right.
I've
Oh,
heard
I
of
did.
that.
I really delved into that area deeply for a number of years, and I did some really amazing stuff with that. I mean, it sounds like you've lost your mind to talk about it in respect like that. The different places that you go,
What was some of
the
those
Sea of
visions,
Souls.
memories like?
Well, I did have an encounter with Jesus, and I'm not a real big Christian. I'm not against Christianity, at all. But anyway, my experience with Jesus, and this was sometime afterwards. I mean, maybe even a year after. I'd really have to go and look at the journals and see when I mentioned it, and I could put a time frame on it pretty accurate because I did journal a lot for a couple of years, kept good records. But I ended up. I was setting in an environment. It was a kind of a cold environment. It was really institutionalized, I think is a good word to call it. It was all white. It was wooden benches. It was no artwork. It was just a cold environment. And I'm sitting there, and I'm the only person in this room. And in walks this guy, and of course, it was Jesus. And he was in a white dirty. He was really dirty. His hair was long. His beard was ragged. And he was the way he carried himself. He didn't look at me. He looked down at the floor, and he went and sat across the room from me. And he just looked down at the floor. And I just sat there like as an observer. I guess I was a little overwhelmed even in the image or the vision or whatever. but he just started mumbling. He was looking at the floor and mumbling in a real depressed state. And he said, "I'm tired of this, Jesus. I'm just so tired of being Jesus." And he sat there and he placed his head and his arms, and he just cradled his face like that for just a couple of minutes, and he got up and he walked away.
So
And
sad.
it was just a bizarre event. I don't know what to make of it. I
Oh,
really didn't. But I tell you, after that event, I was really, really, all of a sudden I wanted to write. I said, I'm going to write a new version of the Christian Bible. And I struggled for a year to learn to read again. And the very first thing I decided to tackle is writing another version of a Christian Bible. I wanted to go through it and pull out all the just the good stuff, make a real positive type of it. And after a year, I couldn't manage to pull it off, and I just kind of dropped that project and started writing other things. So now I've got about 13 manuscripts. So it's interesting that my writing career would begin with wanting to rewrite the Bible. It's weird,
what's
really
the
weird.
manuscripts about?
Well, my the first manuscript I published in 2020 is a book that I did from research, because after all this, you go through me was a huge spiritual transition. I got heavily involved in yoga, in the Hindu and the Vedic. I then got involved became a Reiki master. So I've delved in all these areas. I've dove into all kinds of the different philosophies: Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, just so many of them, even Islam. I've done lots of research in multiple religions and faiths. And even in Greece, I was doing some Orthodox Christian research there. So it just opened up a whole new avenue. But the first book I published was actually on doing the sun gazing experience, where I actually did experiments where I learned to stare at the sun naked eyed for 45 minutes, which sounds insane again. But you can see how I've delved really deep in the rabbit hole since this whole thing has began.
And that's not who you were at all before this. I mean, wasn't you an investigator of some sort?
Right. I was a marine forensics investigator. I had been in business about 15 years. I actually did over 2,500 investigations. So doing research is just another avenue for me to satisfy that, just the facts, ma'am, that kind of thing. So, yes, I had a very grueling career. I was very successful. I represented 19 different insurance companies and a number of law firms. I was actually asked to participate in 7 different hurricane catastrophe teams, where I represented would go in and rescue boats. Ones that's up on land, ones that sank, ones that caught on fire, whatever. All of that part of it was, part of that whole career. But was very, very demanding. But uh, and I was always athlete, always my entire life. So I've shifted gears in that regard. The forensics has turned into now research and writing. Don't Not much of athlete anymore. I'm 70 now. And after coming through the injuries that I've had, plus I had to have a shoulder replacement in 2016. That slows you down a little bit too.
What kind of athlete were you?
Well, I was a track star, cross country and track. Yeah, I was a really fast guy, and I wanted to run marathons, which I did. But like I said, I was a really fast guy. Shorter distances, but I ran some marathons. I also trained in the martial arts. I boxed for a while. So I've done a little bit of water skied. I was almost a professional water skier. Raced bicycles. I've done a little bit of everything. And I'm still riding bicycles and walking, but I'm not going into sports at the speed that I used to be.
It's amazing. You've had heck of a life.
I have had a wonderful life, really. Some great experiences, yes. And it continues still.
Awesome. Now, where are you physically right now? Are you docked in Virginia?
I am. I'm in Hampton, Virginia. I'm a stone's throw from the Chesapeake Bay. Just there's two rows of houses right here across from me. And I can walk to the beach in about 7 or 8 minutes from here. And it's a real nice location. I've been at this location in this area for about 50 years. And I just fell in love with it. The beach is just beautiful here. So I've got sand and beach and water and boating and nature. It's just a wonderfully immersed in nature environment. So I'm lucky to have had this area because I called it my monastery during my healing because it took a long time and I couldn't walk too good, talk too good, and things like that. So it was a good place to hide too. It was really quiet. So I became the hermit.
Sounds like a perfect place to write books.
That's what's become from it. Everything that I've written so far has been done here. And as you know, I've got my boat. I'm here now fixing it up. I've listed it with a broker because I've been traveling so much that to come down and find your boat in disarray because you hadn't seen it in 3 years it's not the way to have a proper boat ownership. So somebody else is going to find a nice time with this vessel. I hate getting rid of it. I looked at shipping it overseas and it's very expensive. And that's only half of the cost is getting it there. Then you've got to redocument the vessel in that country's. Because if you take a boat from America to Belize or Greece or to Spain, you can only keep it in those countries 90 days and you have to leave.
Oh.
So you have to document it, which is you might as well buy a new boat. And that's going to be the plan. My next my next gig is sailing the Mediterranean, following the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. Go into all those over a few years. It was another good dream.
Are you gonna be buried at sea? Are you gonna have to throw your ashes?
Buried at sea. That's right. That's all right. Yeah. Just throw my ashes at sea.
It's awesome. So, what else would you like to discuss?
Oh golly. What would you like to touch base on? You want to touch base on uh oh, let me think. This is the first time we've done this. I should have made a list, shouldn't
Oh, that's okay.
I? We can talk about I we can talk about what I'd like to do with the research
Okay.
for the future. Uh it seems like the fastest growing research is in the after effects. After somebody's had a significant NDE, even for those that don't have a traumatic experience like I did. You know, when that happened with me, there was no information out there. I delved and delved and delved. There was only one Hindu Indian, that even wrote about having a bad Kundalini awakening. You know, these Hindus, they train in that. Yoga was created to prepare the vessel so that your immune system and your nerves were all in communication and the systems were fluid and everything moving well before you awaken that sudden Kundalini awakening. And as I was talking before, Dr. Grayson, I was lucky enough, I had two psychiatrists in my recovery and in my hearing period before I was released by them. And one of them had trained with Dr. Grayson at the hospital that wrote the books on near death experiences and did all the research on it. So I had a real good person to communicate with on that. Was actually, they had a room at the hospital where somebody had a heart attack and they had revived them and they'd been dead for a long. They would put them in this one special place where they had all this other monitoring equipment to really monitor them well because they were just beginning to start collecting data on how the transitions go. But for me,
Like a
I
room to put
tried.
Somebody in case they've had a near-death experience to study them?
Right, it was, but it was connected to the hospital. So like a hospital emergency room with all of the setup, all of the heart monitors and lung machine, well, all of that equipment's what she said, that they just reserve for people that had near-death experiences.
Huh.
So I was lucky to have someone because I had had these experiences, and it's not like you just walk up to people and start talking about all these crazy experiences that's
Right.
been going on with you. I was lucky at the time that I had made a really good friend with a family here that was on their boat that lived near me. And so I ended up probably her being the first person that I started opening up to and communicating with. And she really helped me relax in that, which the big gain from all of that is ions. By the time I'd progressed along to where I'd got invited to come and lecture, I wasn't real thrilled about the idea. This lady was the one that really encouraged me to take up the gauntlet and practice for it and do whatever I needed to do to get over there and do that. And I'm so happy I did because it was a huge confidence builder. It really, really got me out of the concrete, so to speak, and got me more motivated to go and start talking about my story and what I'd like to see happen in the future with people. And I think now my research has gone in just crazy areas. And I learned recently in this next book that's coming out called The Cosmic Circuit of Man, actually goes and delves into near-death experiences from Egypt. And what I've learned in all of my Egyptian research is they had a ritual for the pharaohs. The pharaohs in Egypt were considered gods on earth. And what I learned that they did when they were picking a pharaoh is they had what they called the Osiris rite. And they would take the pharaoh or the pharaoh candidate and they would put him in a sarcophagus and seal it shut with wax. And they would leave it, they would monitor this, and they would leave them in there for 8 minutes, is what I was told was the average number that they would put till the people suffocated. So they would then pry the lead off and remove the lead and revive the potential pharaoh. If he didn't live, well, he won't be pharaoh. But if he did live, they would interview him to find out what type of experiences this group of sages, these ritualistic guys that performed this experiment or this indoctrination, illumination. But they said that they did this because it made them gods on earth, because every time they would do it, they would gain gifts. So there's a lot of people that claim that they've gained gifts from all this, which I do. And that's why I was, I guess, attracted to that. But with my investigative experience, I've done locked up on my own experiences and finding the experiences that they did, particularly New Kingdom. Ramses II was the greatest of all the most powerful Egyptian pharaohs in their history. And he was New Kingdom pharaoh. And he reigned for 67 years. And they have a festival, and it's not every annual, it's not every biannual. It just kind of floats around. It's every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, something like that. But in his reign, they have what they call the Heb festival, where they do this Osiris rite again for the pharaoh. And they say it's a rebirth and a regeneration where it gives him more powers. Ramses II had 14 Hebsed festivals where he suffered a literally forced near-death experience that he survived. So when you take those and you look at the ancient pharaohs who were worshipped as God on earth, they were responsible for everything: fertility, food, rain, all of it, earthquake, everything, bad weather. It was up to them. The people looked to these pharaohs. So they want it to be more powerful and more powerful and more powerful. So they would do these festivals, these near-death experiences voluntarily.
It seems to me like somebody that's after being powerful, especially after near death experience and using it, is just so far off track. Just my personal
I
opinion.
agree. I agree with you. But that was the theme for the day back then, you know.
Now, you
The
got into
thing
astral projection for a while?
I did. I studied everything you could get involved in with that. And I got into shamanism really heavy. I probably had a pretty good library on shamanism. And I started getting into they call them like soul journeys is what they call their experiences. And they have all these little rituals they do. And it's meditating, you're getting into that frequency. I learned to be able to go into this other place. I called it my second attention. So I started doing these real deep meditations, doing these where you just disconnect. You become an observer. You're not really a participant. And then after that, I started having all of these images. I got into the Celtic end of it, and the Celts used to go into a tunnel, and I found out it ended up right down from where my boat is. I had a weeping willow tree right on the water side, and that was a real popular one for the Celts to use as a weeping willow. So I would look at that tree for a few minutes and envision that tree, that I was down there at that tree and I was going to jump in that tunnel that was under the tree. You know, the tree of life. Uh-oh, I've got Air Force plane going over. You might be able to hear that in the background. I'm only about 3 miles from Langley Air Force Base. So if they're coming in at the end of the day, it could get loud. But anyway, I did the astral traveling and I started going in. I would end up in a tunnel. And it was almost like a roller coaster. You ever do those roller coasters where you're totally in the dark and you're going through there and then you'll see a light coming, and that's what it would be like. And I would be like, could feel the velocity, but I would end up coming out of the tunnel and being launched into space. I mean, I'd literally be traveling through space. I could feel the twitching of my face as it was moving along the speed, and it was really bizarre. And I did this for a number of years. But you passing by the stars and all of these, but there's what I learned over time, it's different levels of these realms that you can get to. You've got the space one, you've got the tunnel one, you've got another one. I ended up in a cave that it was actually throned, huge thrones like giants sat in there. I never saw the people. And I'm like, what are these caves for? And there's a bed over there. Is that my bed? So I would go there and sleep in that bed in my astral travel and just go and find and climb up the side of it's like a cliff inside the tunnel, like another level, and go up there and go take naps. I don't know. It's weird, bizarre.
Do you think you traveled through time or something or to another place?
Uh, I don't know. I can't say in those instances. Now, I did have one instant that we were going through a time when the children were going overseas to spend the summer with their dad. Their mom and dad had divorced and joint custody. You know how that game plays. And the kids were going over there for the first time. So I told this friend at the time, I said, listen, I said, I love your kids and all that stuff. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to check out to see where he lives. So I did. I literally flew across the Atlantic Ocean. I wasn't high off the water. I remember going, man, really rocket speed. And I came up to this island and I went through and I could see all the houses and it was dark. It was nighttime. And I found this one house. I said, that's the house. He's in that house. And I went to the house and I could look in the window. It was like I was outside the house, but I could see the house. It was a stucco house. It was painted yellow. It had round arches. It had a terracotta roof on it. I could see all that. And I could see him inside the house, and I could see the arches and where it was built in there. And I went and told this friend of mine the next day what I'd seen, because she was getting ready to go over there with him to take him. And she called me a few days later after she had arrived there, and she couldn't even talk. She says, "Leo, I can't believe what you told me about this place." She says, "As soon as I walked up to it, I recognized it because you described it so well." So weird, weird. It's just, you have a lot of experiences like that in the astral realm. Um, Another place I used to go to, was frequent. And I actually did some research on this because it was so bizarre to me. It's a realm that's like everything is gray. There's no color. Everything is just different shades of gray, like it's all under a moonlight. And I was hovering, traveling. Always, it seemed like I was always going pretty fast when I was traveling. But below me, as far as I could see, were people crowded together, shoulder to shoulder. And as far as I could see, all around me were these people. They were all going the same direction. And when I would fly over them, they would look up at me, but they weren't talking to each other.
Huh.
They weren't doing any communication. They were all there. They were all gray colored, and they would just look at me go by. So I got thinking about, what is this? What is this? What is this all about? So I researched and researched. I found out Edgar Casey experienced places there, and he called it Sea of Souls. And his description of that, and some other people's also, says that's where all of the spirits go, all of the souls go for reincarnation to come back on earth or wherever they're going to the next realm. But I never saw where they were going. But it reminded me of like going over like all the crowds, like at the Washington Monument, when they have all of the speeches and all of that, the holidays up there where the people were just all packed into the Million Man marches, all of that kind of stuff. But there was never in, I went there numerous times, and it was like, I believe they could see me really well because maybe I had color to me. Maybe I wasn't gray to them, but I didn't know. All I know is they were all gray to me and everything else was too. Very bizarre.
And they're just all walking together, and you were just like flying over.
That's right. Going by, going somewhere, wherever that was at the time. And all of these trips would end. I learned in really short order. The moment you try and think about it and deal with it while you're there, it would end. It just would end.
Huh.
So you have to get into that. Like I say, I called it my second attention, to where you were observing only, you're not participating. And years of doing this, and I actually started feeling, I had a couple incidences that I would go by and I could see people in their homes and stuff like it. And I felt a little uncomfortable with it, like pervert, peeping Tom, that I could see these people and none of them could see me. So I dropped out of it, and I did that on purpose. But if you get into the Vedic system, they say a person, when he's going through a spiritual transition, that there's numerous gifts that's available to them. And they say the biggest mistake that can happen to somebody is like a person becomes a psychic. It's because this person, he has this psychic gift and he gets stuck there. He never progresses any further than that. He may be a really good psychic, but he never gets all of the gifts that come with the package. So I was really intent on following that Vedic kind of pathway, that you deal with them, you taste the water, you experience it, and then you move on and look for the next opportunity. And that's what I did. So you went through level after level after level after level. So many things happened to me because of that. Then once you get through kind of the barrage of they call them cities in the Sanskrit, once you get through all of them and have witnessed them, then you can pick and choose which ones you want to participate with. And you have an understanding of the whole broader package. This is how all of these sages and these gurus do it, to what they considered enlightened, because they've experienced everything. So it was a good route for me to go. It's been real healing for me. Everything, the sun gazing. I got into becoming an alchemist. I got into making ionic colloidal silver, ionic colloidal gold, and copper. Gotten into all of that kind of stuff. I did blood electrification for parasite removal. I've experimented with so many things. Now I'm into longevity research, probably the last 5 or 6 years. And since I did my 90-day fast in 2015, I I did a 90-day fast, and since then I've been an intermittent faster. So I've eaten only one meal a day, and I take a lot of supplements and stuff for improving the immune system, increasing your telomeres on your longevity. And so it's really expanded. That's why we want to do the healing center. We want to real detox people, to change their behavior, some behavioral management where you approach life differently. It's the only way you can change and heal. You know, we are our own healers. Nobody can heal you better than your own mind. So if you got the right tools, the right information, you have the opportunity and the motivation. You have the opportunity to heal yourself.
So now that you've studied all these things and you're 70 years old and you have these experiences, and what do you make of it all, the NDE itself? Where do you think we go? Who do you think that is? What do you conclude?
Well, for me, uh, it's been a life-changing experience for sure. And that was the toughest part to deal with. It changes you in every canvas of your life, and it changes the people around you. In my instance, because of the brain injury and my personality change, I had a real cussing problem at first. I mean, I tell you, I was the saltiest sailor, and I couldn't help it. I used to be embarrassed. I'd be talking to people and words, they just kept like, oh my God, I could see it in their faces. People give you this look,
It's like I think it's
So,
impulse in control or something.
oh yeah. Well, I had Tourette's syndrome and had a stutter for a while. So I had a real speaking issue anyway. Throw in as many cuss words as I could put in a sentence didn't help matter in conversation much.
And you're
So
rewriting the Bible as you're cussing like a sailor.
that's right. That's right. Some Hail Marys. But it was interesting, and I want to this I sent you my manuscript on the rare one, which is actually about my NDE and my healing transformation. And I really am intently on wanting my part of being involved with ions is in helping people heal, giving them a happy ending story to one that was so horrible. I mean, it's terrible. I've heard you talking about homelessness and being out on the street and all. And I mean, I was like $11,000 arrears on my mortgage on my vessel, 7,000 arrears on my slip fee. I mean, it was just. I used to wake up in the morning and say, "What can I mess up today? What can I start with?" It was just that terrible. Every day it was just for like every day for 18 months, and it just got to be horrible. But I believe that where we're at in the world now at this time frame, the whole COVID thing, the economics of going on, what's going on in the world and everything, all of it, that all of this was supposed to happen with me at this time, at my age, because I've got the maturity and the experiences to recognize uh, healthy, positive things to make people's lives better. They're going to change one way or the other, whether you like it or not, they're going to change.
Mhm.
It's learning the tools to recognize the change. Like with me with my healing, is I was trying to work on my flaws and I would try and recognize my flaws, do something about it to where you're proactive and you're really identifying things. During my transition, because of the traumatic brain injury, I used to have what I would call a uh, I would have brain spikes. It was like somebody stabbing me in the brain, and it was epilepsy. I suffered with that as a result from it too, for a while, which was real painful. But it seemed like every time I would have one of these, I would have this real awakening. I would start to notice things that I didn't notice before, and it would make me happier for a moment. But it also started making me notice what was wrong with me more. Because when you have a brain injury, all you know is you're not functioning right, but you don't know how bad you are. And to try and heal with it, you really have to become cognitive because you develop these bad behaviors, and these bad behaviors become habit and you never heal. You get locked into all you want to do is talk about me. Oh, woe is me, my life today. You fall into that negative rut, and you've got to look for happiness on the other side because happiness is there. You just got to pursue it again. You've got to go for it with that. You can't be in that depressed mode and wanting to commit suicide. And that's real important. And I imagine you've talked to a lot of people that's probably had experiences that really pushed them to the brink that they just didn't want to be here anymore. Look at the suicide rate going on now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's magnificent. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I don't pretend to know, what you're going through of this traumatic brain injury, but I'm picturing this dark room and like a little lamp comes on here, a little lamp comes on there, and here's a little lamp. It's like it took a while for to get you a light full picture.
that's right. It exactly does. And get a grip on it. But what happened with me that I learned over a period of time is every time I would have one of these broadenings of my perception, okay, is it was always a depressive cycle with it because you do recognize more of your weaknesses. I'm really falling short here, which instead of getting depressed over it, you go ahead and boo-hoo and have the pity party, but get on with it and make it better. And because these they got further and further apart till they don't occur anymore, but they were real consistent for a long, long time. And I learned to recognize, I said, okay, it's good. I can tell I've had a shift. A cognitive shift is what I called them because all of a sudden I was smarter. I felt I was noticing more around me, more just everything, more alert. And every time I would have one, you recognize your weaknesses. And so I developed a routine, being a systematic guy. I developed systematic approaches to how to deal with each one of them. And that's what I write about in my book. I try and put tools from me being by myself and no medical insurance at the time. So it was not like I was going to the doctor all the time. I had to wait. And I really didn't see a doctor for 6 months after I
After
was
your
injured, other than
accident?
the emergency. right. Other than the emergency room, that 3 weeks after when I went to the emergency room, and of course they did the test, and because I had no insurance, said you the recommendation from the doctor was, well, you've definitely had some kind of injury, and he said, I'm going to make two suggestions to you: don't get divorced, and don't go buy a new house. Is what his
Like no
recommendation was to
major
me.
life decisions right
That's
now.
right. And the next day, my wife says, I'm leaving you.
That quick.
But I didn't buy the new house. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was the very next day.
Wow.
So
Dang,
anyway,
she dealt with
life
this one
moved
day.
on. Yeah, yeah.
Jeez. One day and she just couldn't take it no more.
Moved on. Well, what had happened in her own fairness, she had her sister's husband had fallen down the stairs in their home. They had a real long staircase in their house and had injured his head and had a traumatic brain injury. And she watched what her sister went through with his recovery over a number of years. And she said, that's why she said, I'm not going to live with a retard the rest of my life. And she was comparing it to her sister. So, uh, you got to forgive people.
Yeah.
I could have used a lot of help at the time, but it didn't work out that way. But I'm here.
Yeah, and we're better off not having those kind of relationships. Life's too short to spend
Oh,
our life with
man.
people like that.
It really is. The real odd thing with me was with my wife at the time is I didn't miss her. I lost feeling. I lost feeling for people. I didn't have that compassion for that love for people. It made me numb inside too, not just on the outside. And it was 2 years. All of a sudden, one day, it was, oh, wham. Like I said, I had one of these cognitive shifts. It was, oh my God, I miss my wife so bad. It was like she had just walked out the door. And I contacted her. She was in another relationship for 2 years. And I'm like, hey, uh, can we talk? And yeah, we talked a little bit and all this stuff. But she finally told me we were friends there, friendly for a while. But she said, no, I don't want to get back together with you. She said, you were a great transitional husband. Thank you very much. But no, I said, come
Wow.
on, man.
Yeah, who
It's
needs
funny.
that?
But you wonder when I think of that circumstance there, that 2 years later it took me to be able to even recognize that I missed somebody. To with what I said about the memories and the astral travel stuff, actually being some of those could have been those NDE. I'm more to attach to them because I feel like I missed them. I missed that opportunity. And it's the only explanation I can come up with is my crazy mind.
Well, we all have
Just
to
took,
deal with our disabilities. I mean, when we
we do.
get a
We
disability, it doesn't come with instructions usually, and we just
no,
gotta do like what you're doing, figure it out, what
that's
works for
right.
you, what don't.
And it really changes you. America's not the greatest place to get a disability. I wish I could say it was, but it's really tough. People's attitudes change towards you when you're disabled, particularly if you've had a brain injury. People are more afraid of you, particularly if you have a filthy mouth, aggressive. They see you and they want to head the other way.
I
So
know.
I've lived through that period, took my blows, but it was so bizarre at the beginning when I was trying to get out and walking because I was so crippled. I was embarrassed to go out and walk around people because I'd always carried myself as an athlete.
Yeah.
And finally, when I started going out and wanting to get some interaction with people, I started picking up on how they were receiving me. And these people, a lot of them that I've known for years and years. And it was like everybody was really not wanting to get involved. It was hard for me to converse with them and everything. So I wanted to change the way I looked. I shaved my beard off. I dyed my hair blonde. I dyed my beard red. I mean, I did all this stuff just so I could see myself as what they were seeing me as. It was, I don't know, I had this weird image of myself I was trying to portray so they could recognize me or
Sounds
something.
like
It
you
was
had
really
identity
bizarre.
crisis.
Oh my God, it was terrible. And it became a competition between old Leo and new Leo, is what happened. And what inevitably had to happen is old Leo was gone. I could not be that person anymore, no matter how hard I tried. It was always failure. No matter how hard I desired it, it just was not happening for me. So I started saying, okay, well, let's look at this thing. New Leo. What is new Leo? How do I identify it? I said, I got looking at it. I said, I'm really very lucky. I have the opportunity to be whoever I want to become right now at this point in time in my life at 50, 56, 57 years old. I have the opportunity to be exactly who I want to be. And that's what I did. I trained, I studied, I developed behaviors that I wanted for myself. And that's who I've become now. So I really like this new Leo. I think he's a pretty decent guy, and I want to help people.
You got a new wife.
That
So apparently she likes the new
new
Leo.
wife. That's right. Yeah, met Heidi Grant. We met on an Egyptian research site 3 years ago. I was doing Egyptian research. She is a world traveler extraordinaire. Her dad got her into traveling at an early age, and plus, they're being in UK, the UK people, they're traveling. All of the civilizations on the planet that travel, the people in the UK, they move. They got lots of time off. They got more money to spend, and they travel a lot. It's real convenient. It's cheaper from over there to go to Spain than it is for Americans to go there. We don't have time off here, and the money, we're working two or three
Right.
jobs trying to pay the house bills. And that's the difference by marrying a Brit and seeing how the social system works, particularly the medical part of it, seeing how that works over there with their national health system and seeing how it is with private care. It's been a really, really learning experience. And she has aged parents who are both in really declining states and uh, in and out of doctor's care, we should say, having testing and things like that. So I'm getting to see how that system unfolds, and that's just the way it is. I hope that we end up with some kind of a universal government global healthcare program. I think that's the plan that the World Health Organization has in the United Nations eventually. It can't come soon enough. I think every human being on this planet should have some kind of health care or emergency care if he's injured, that the community should look out for these people. But we're there. We'll see what happens in the future. I feel good about the future.
Good.
We've got some difficult times to get through, but before you can have growth and change, you've got to have destruction. You got to tear down the old paradigm and build a new one.
I was listening to a video of yours a while ago again, and where Neil Helm introduced you. So you must have been down in Virginia then, several years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah,
wish I could quote what you said. I loved it. It was something about that we need to get back to the way things were, like we've gone
that's
to.
right. We need to devolve.
Yeah,
That's the word I use.
yeah.
Devolve. We've evolved away from connecting to the energy that's around us, to connecting to the environment. We've polluted everything: the air, the food, uh, don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. It's been so manipulated against us that we need to get away from that stuff, eat better, take better care of ourselves, and get connected, get our shoes off, and get standing in the dirt and the sand. Sun gazing, believe me, has just been a miraculous healing adventure for me. I was on up to 7 different medications, a couple of them psychotic type drugs, and over a period of time doing the sun gaze, and I was removed from every medication. I haven't been on any medication now in 6 or 7 years. And I was lucky I had a doctor that was sympathetic to want me to get off of the drugs. And I put in the effort and did the education and the exercises to get off of them. Plus, my body had grown and healed. It
It's
was all
good.
good.
It's all good.
My vision, all of it, everything. And I went to prove to you that sun gazing does improve your vision. Uh, the This is a new pair of glasses I got actually 1 year ago this month in the UK. It'd been 4 years since I'd had a prescription, okay, and I needed it, and I'd already had other prescriptions before, but I had gone down. My eyes had improved because all the cataracts were removed from the sun gazing. I had cataracts real bad. I had 3 optometrists say, Leo, you need to have lens replacement surgery. And I got into this sun gazing thing. I said, I'd really like to see if the sun gazing could burn the cataracts off. And I went through a year and a half of sun gazing. And I went to my doctor was in my network to write me a prescription who'd already said I needed to get because my vision had deteriorated. And I thought my failure, my research on sun gazing was a failure. So I went to my optometrist in my system to write me the letter to go get my eyes to the surgeon to get the lenses replaced, which is in another city away. I got to go away and all of this stuff. Anyway, so I go see this surgeon to get my eyes done. And I go through and I do all the testing and everything. And when we're done, he's sitting there at the computer working on his computer thing. And he turns around, he gets a pen out and he starts writing on a prescription pad. And he rips it off and he hands me a prescription. I look at it, it's a prescription for new glasses. I said, duh, why am I here? You know, I've had 4 optometrists now say, Leo, I'm here to get lens replacement surgery. And they could have written me a prescription for new glasses. Why are you writing me a prescription for new glasses? He says, Leo, oh, you just put down all the other guys and said, oh, it's hard to find good help today. It's such liars out there. Everybody's so wrong. He says, on a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being the worst, your left eye is a 0 as far as cataracts. You have absolutely no cataracts on your left eye. He said your right eye, he said you're a good solid 1. So you're just at the beginning of having a cataract on that eye. He says, go get your glasses. He says, you're not a candidate. So I didn't realize it at that moment, but my experiment was a huge, huge success. I removed the damn cataracts off my eyes. Okay. One of the optometrists even drew a map of them, what they looked like on my eyeballs for me. But anyway, 4 years ago, I had a prescription. And last year I went to London. Heidi and I both went. We were traveling to Egypt. So I said, okay, I'm going to get my eyes done. You get yours done. We went in and got prescription. I go through all the tests. I go in to see the optometrist there. And he pulls his glasses off like this. And he's like this. He's uncomfortable. And he says, Leo, he says, I've been doing this 25 years. And he says, I've never, ever seen this before. He said, it's been a long time since you've had your glasses changed. He says, I have to lessen the prescription on your glasses. The reason you can't see is because the old prescription is too strong. But he was just flabbergasted. Like, how did this happen? Because, everybody comes in there, they get a stronger prescription.
Right.
So that was just more testament that sun gazing does improve your vision, and it improves a lot of other things. So I'm big on the sun gazing thing. I'll be promoting that and doing. I've actually got an interview on doing sun gazing pretty soon with a lady in the UK. So it's good. It's progressive.
Okay. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
No,
Way to
thank you very
contact
much.
you? How about you want to leave somebody a way if they want to contact you to have you
If
on their
anybody
podcast?
wants to contact me, best way, because I do travel so much, like this phone I've got now is only about 5 weeks old. And when I go back to UK, it won't be good. I'll be getting another phone there. For some reason, there's not a lot of compatibility, particularly when you're going into countries like Egypt, Malta, all these places that don't have a real good Belize, real good infrastructure in that regard. That cellular service is just not as accommodating. I think this new Elon Musk thing with the satellites, if you got a clear sky, that might be the way for me to go in the future. But yes, the best way to get me would be my email, which is all small caps, CAPTLEO WALTON@gmail.com. And I'll get back with you.
Okay.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you. I hope we do this again.
Uh-huh. Oh, thank you, Leo.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
See you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.